Hello, we are Tor
Matt
or Tradits.
or Tradit.
J Scrib.
We are with DFW Gaming Village. What we do is we pretty much just host a lot of opportunities for people to come over and game, but we also go to a lot of different places like LANallNIGHT or Gen Con, BGG Con, Azalea Con, a lot of different places, and say, hey, we're all going and gaming here this weekend. Join us for a variety of board games and have a good time. So we're going to go over kind of why we think board games are coming back and why they go hand in hand with things like this, like LANs. Like we even go to QuakeCon like a lot of you guys do, and we'll bring our rigs and we'll play video games during the day, but at night we want to unwind and hang out with our friends and play some deception games. It's all fancy. Ooh, ah.
I have not seen this PowerPoint, so just so
You've
y'all know.
seen it. We've done this at PAX, PAX South. What was the other big one?
Cool. Did we do it at Quake?
Oh, there was a few anime conventions we did it as well.
A-Fest.
Yeah. Oh,
A-Fest.
A-Fest. A-Fest is another one we've done this one at. I might have just turned my volume up instead of off. Okay. I think we've done a panel at QuakeCon, PAX South, Anime
A-Fest.
Fest.
Did you do one at BGG Con?
No, they don't really do panels. They just do like open gaming and whatnot. But yeah, and at places where there's already board games, you don't really need this discussion because they're playing board games. But a lot of you guys are on your computers and wondering what in the world we're doing in the other room or why we're sitting in a circle looking like a cult late at night. That's a good one, right?
The secret is we are a cult.
And the truth is that we also play video games, but there's been a resurgence in board games lately, and we wanted to talk about why we think that is and why we think they coexist side by side. You guys want to weigh in?
Yeah. So like many of you, I was a big QuakeCon LAN party guy back in the late 90s to mid 2000s before the internet. You know, the internet speeds made it to where you could just play games at home with your friends. Why do you need to haul your computers out and play games in person for a lag-free experience? So once the internet speeds got that way, LAN parties kind of started dwindling. Well, really quick, we realized there is still demand for this. You know, as we can see right now, people still want to come hang out in person and play games, whether it be a LAN or tabletop.
A couple people here I'd even talked to while we were playing Werewolf, and they said they were looking for a LAN because they had heard whispers of it with moving to Texas recently, and they were like, hold up, y'all still take your computer somewhere? Like, really? So he found it, and he drove up to play games here, and then he also played Werewolf with us at night. So he did exactly what we say people are starting to do is the LANs are coming back because moving your rig and seeing people again is big, as well as playing board games. And we have a comment, board games coming back? They left? Some people never stopped. Some people have been playing D&D or Pathfinder throughout it, or they've known of some of these older games like Battlestar Galactica or Monikers, and they've continued with it. But others, they fell from the radar. Like I used to play Munchkin and Bang the card game when I was a teenager. And then I stopped for a little while. I got all into the computer stuff. And then the next game I played was Battlestar Galactica. And I was like, what? There's a whole world of these?
Yeah, board gaming as a hobby is exploding. It's every year. It's just growing and growing and growing. And I really think it is a big resurgence, especially after there was quite a lull. You know, there were still games, board games and everything coming out, but it wasn't like anything we're seeing right now.
And I also think that one of the biggest things that has happened is our friend, the I word, inflation. And what I mean by that is that, you know, used to be back in the day, everybody had an N64 or a PS2 with a multi-tap, and you just get your buddies to come over to the house and you're playing GoldenEye, Super Smash Brothers, anything like that. Nowadays, everybody has to have a console. Everybody has to have high-speed internet. Everybody has to have the game. And not only that, outside of console, if you go to PC, which, of course, look out, everybody's playing PCs, but to have a good PC that you enjoy playing online games on costs a lot of money. Unless you're the guy that won that PC last night. But
we killed him in Werewolf for it.
but seriously, But seriously though, like, even the kind of mid to below average like custom rigs people build costs several $100s to several $1,000s, and that price of entry just kind of squicks some people out, and they just like kind of nope out of it. So I think that's contributing to the rise as well.
Yeah, it's bringing back one person buying a game, and like 1 to 20 people can join in on it whenever they want. Though Kickstarter and the cost of pieces and shipping is making like one Monster Hunter board game take forever to get here and cost over $300. That's rough.
Well, and the current shipping crisis doesn't help those things.
Exactly. But there's all different types of board games. So if you see one, you're like, I played Munchkin. That was the worst time of my life, and I never want to do it again. That's okay, because there's so many other different types of board games with a variety of player counts and weight, whether you want lighthearted, good fun, or roll the dice, no strategy, or if you want to sit there for 12 hours and super try to crush your friends with the most strategic move you've ever done in your life. Like, both are available and every option in between.
Oh, I also wanted to say, as many of you probably experienced during the Snowmageddon, the huge ice storm that was kicking power off for a lot of people, that was a great week for us. We didn't have power, so we were just playing games by candlelight and by LED emergency light and stuff all weekend. It was awesome.
Secret Hitler by Candlelight is amazing.
Yeah. And on top of that, like she said, from a weight perspective, I think what kind of turns a lot of people off toward getting into board games, the people who aren't, is just that they get kind of intimidated when they see folks who are really serious about it, who've gotten to like the harder stuff. But there's a lot of games that we call gateway games that are good to get people in, like this person who's like, I don't know anything about board games at all, and their only, point of reference is something like Monopoly or Candyland or something like that. There's games that you can get them to understand that are pretty simple enough to pick up, that eventually they start going on to the harder things, and then in a few months you have them playing Twilight Imperium.
And board games do have a bad habit of having more acronyms than like my own job. So you can talk about Euro, deck building, co-op, drafting, TCG, LCG, party, deception, worker placement, war, trivia, auction, and RPG. But don't forget about tabletop RPG. That's different somehow. And a lot of these slides we went over with you guys last time, but we want to do a focus on the tabletop RPGs, since we have friends from Forward RPGs, that's FWD, and we'll have ways for you guys to check them out. They do what we do, and we've actually been friends with them for a long time, that they take RPGs to conventions and they help people get game masters and run games. So when I was like, hey, do you guys have people for this event? They're like, yes. Immediately they jumped on board. So they will be here the next event as well in April. So we want to make sure that you guys learn about these, jump in on them. I have yet to run or be a part of an RPG that our friend E-Rock has done and been disappointed. It's always been something wildly different than what I'm used to, and a great time, even if all my characters die in the process. So this is kind of what we were talking about with weight: light, medium, and heavy. Loading. So a lot of games that you see that we play later at night, because we're all like absolutely out of it from playing heavier games during the day, is going to be these light gateway games like Codenames or Just One or Monikers. What else?
Word Slam.
Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah, there you go. Even though that's banned at your house, but anyway. Would 2 rooms be considered light? I mean, it's deception.
Yeah, you just got one card, and you figure it out from there.
Yeah. So just like stuff like Costume Party Assassins, something that maybe you can knock out in like 20 minutes while you're waiting on something else to start.
They do tend to have a lot of luck. Though specifically Codenames, I would not say has luck, because you're trying to craft a code that your teammates get to connect the most words on the board as possible. So there's a little luck with the randomization of the board. So you've got to be really crafty to try to connect 5 words with 1 word clue to your teammates. And then going from lightweight and gateway games into medium. A lot of you guys have probably heard of Lords of Waterdeep. That's almost a classic board game now as opposed to a modern board game, but you put your workers in a spot, it does the thing. You're trying to collect resources by putting your workers in said spot and doing the thing and completing quests. Not too terribly complicated from what a lot of our video games are. Other medium weight games?
Ticket to Ride. Well, Ticket to Ride can be considered light to medium, but there's a lot of intricate strategy in Ticket to Ride. But Settlers of Catan. Like, when I talk to folks who board game, for like a bunch of them, their gateway game was Settlers of Catan. I don't know why, but stuff like that, stuff like Carsicone, stuff like Alhambra, things of that nature, just kind of things where you're building something, but you're also gaining points. So you're building those foundational skills that carry over into other games that are basically doing the same thing. It's just that they might manipulate the rules a little bit differently.
In Twitch or chat, if you guys are listening and you want to chime in on some of your favorite lightweight, gateweight, medium games, and shocker, heavy games are coming up in a moment, feel free and we will add those to the discussion because I'm watching the chat.
And to be topical, I think Dune Imperium is medium weight.
I don't understand that game. I played it one time, the first time, a couple weeks ago, and I won. I could not tell you how. And it shows because we just played it and I got last place by like a lot. I don't know how.
So I think probably weight goes into both concepts of what you're doing as well as what additional variables are added. Because at its very basic, you know, Dune Imperium's a worker placement game. You put a worker here, they do a thing. But the difference between that and something like Lords of Waterdeep is Lords of Waterdeep is, oh, well, I just do this thing, versus something like Dune Imperium where you're trying to figure out in your head, okay, what's the optimal strategy? Yeah, I do this thing, but is that going to allow me to do something else, to do something else, to do something else type of thing?
Well, it also makes sense in Lords of Waterdeep. Like, I'm going to get the fighters to go on this fighting mission. That makes sense to me. But I don't quite get how the water and the spice and the money and the dudes fighting, like, I don't get their synergy quite yet. And sometimes I can just get lucky and win, and the other time I get unlucky and just do it all wrong. All right, I think next up is heavy games. And these are the ones that either you love, like you're playing Civilization right now, you started it on Friday, you're continued to play it. These are for you guys that you don't want the luck-based games. You want the ones that you get to strategize and you're invested and you're building an empire over the course of many hours. Other heavy games recommended?
Oh, well, I mean, of course, TI4. TI4 is my favorite board game. Full disclosure, that's why I will find a way to shoehorn TI4 into any discussion about board games. But things like Gloomhaven, which I've still have never played, but things like what's that one that you really like with the
Rune Wars?
Rune Wars. There you go, that one. Just something that explaining it takes a long time and playing it takes a long time, but if you actually get into it and you understand it, it just, the feeling that you get and the adrenaline rush from spending that much time on something and the strategy and things of that nature, like it's hard to top.
Yeah, Twilight Imperium 4th edition is like a it plays up to 8 players and it takes about 8 to 12 hours to play. We have done it in 4 hours before, and that was great. But that's more rare. The other one I wanted to talk about, and I think it kind of mixes up what a heavy game is Western Empires. When combined with Eastern Empires, it's an extremely simple game. You just have little soldiers on these spaces, and if you have more soldiers than someone else, you will defeat them. It plays up to 19 people, and it takes 16 to 20 some odd hours.
Oh, and what you like to refer to as Twilight Imperium arcade mode, Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea.
But we have yet to do Western and Eastern Legends combined, but it has been described to us as an experience. Just looking at the board, and like you can critique it left and right. I'm saying how it's not a good game, but how it is a fun game, and it will make you want to go back to it at least like once a year just to go through that super simple concept that for some reason is so wildly complicated with the discussions with your friends and strategizing and just trying to make the best of it for your group.
And the other thing about Western empires is you can be eliminated in the game. You can be wiped out. So imagine you're sitting there for 12 hours and your neighbor just has more troops than you and decides to turn his anger towards you because you have something that he wants or something. And so you have to spend probably 3 or 4 hours just sitting there losing, and there's not a lot you can do about it. So it's a pretty rough game. Like it'll definitely make some people angry. And in fact, it's the only board game I've ever seen that has rules for how someone can leave. Like it's that long, and if they're losing and they don't want to play anymore, there's rules of how they can gracefully exit the game.
And then, like, all their stuff that they've accrued gets, like, divvied up with the rest of the table.
Yeah, it's something brutal like that, yeah.
Like, you win a little bit for them being so angry that they leave that you kind of take some of their stuff. Kind of like an empire falling.
There you go.
And I will say, so chat has mentioned, I think that says Tall Paul, Munchkin is very much a gateway game, and that is not wrong. But I also think the way we just described this last game of Eastern and Western empires, we would very much describe in a similar way to Munchkin, that it can take hours and hours on a game that has no right to take so many hours, and it's either the best time or the worst time.
And someone's guaranteed to be mad.
I could see it. Yeah.
So
Another game.
I do want to say real quick for Munchkin, I'm going to steal our friend Steven's story on that real fast, is one of his friends tried to break Munchkin by just being mean. Anytime that somebody wanted to do something, the answer was no. No, 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 no. And it spread like a mean plague across this game of Munchkin to the point where that person who started the mean streak was the only one having a good time. So they had determined that they had collectively lost the game of Munchkin, and he had won it after so many hours because they were like, nobody else is having fun but you, so we're going to do this. They played it again, like a year later. Steven decided that he was done with that mindset, and he was going to do the opposite. He was going to win the game with love. So anytime someone wanted help, he helped them for nothing. He would give them more stuff than they needed. So he went in the opposite direction, and soon other people were figuring this out. But everyone was having a miserable time because everyone was getting help and they needed it. So they continuously try to take each other out to the point they were saying, we're not having any fun with everyone doing it this way. So Steven had won that game after several hours, and they had determined that love conquered hate. And they were never going to play Munchkin again.
That's so great. Another game, like what you were talking about, that can take hours and it has no right to take hours. Red Dragon Inn. I love Red Dragon Inn. It's such a fun game. But if you go too high on that player count, like, you will be sitting there all day and all night.
Can you combine all 7 base games into one? Yes. Should you? No. I will say the most I've tried is 10. So I haven't actually tried to do all 7 at this point, but 10 players in one go, and then I was like, never again. We're going to cap it at like 6. Okay. We spent a lot of time on this one, which is fun.
Another good heavy game before we go. Anachrony.
Yes. Anachrony. A time-traveling board game where you borrow things from yourself in the future, and you have to give it back to yourself before you need it in the future.
Or you might create a paradox. It's a real game mechanic. It's brutal. It's a brain burner.
And if you wanted to see TI4, this is still 6 players, right? Or was this 8 players? This is TI4 at 8 players with the expansion. And this table is about 5.2 feet by 7.2 feet, and it definitely stretched the boundaries of our table. A lot of this stuff, like I said, we covered last time, but we wanted to talk about more games with you guys before we do a focus on deception games and tabletop games. But player count, it's depending on what you need. If you play a lot of 2-player games because it's you and your spouse at home, or you and a sibling at home or something, then that's what you need. But if you are like us and you go to a lot of conventions and want to get a lot of people in on games at the same time, then finding those games with high player counts is really good, or a variety. Werewolf here at Anime Fest, and then there's also something called Mega Games, which is a thing that can take up your entire day, but you're in teams of 4 or 5 people. We've done this for Aegon's Conquest, which is a Game of Thrones spinoff. We've done this for Wolf's...
Watch the Skies.
Watch the Skies, which is Battlestar?
Kinda.
Maybe that's Den of Wolves is Battlestar and
The-
Werewolf in the Sky.
And Watch the Skies is like a the closest I could compare it to would be a Civilization, but with aliens.
Yeah, aliens are landing, and the whole world is finding out in this moment, and how they land and what they do is totally different from game to game. So how the different countries react to that is different from game to game.
Another plug, and they are really good friends of ours, and we really hope that if any of them are watching, but this is another plug, Dallas Mega Games. Dallas Mega Games is a group that's run by a couple of friends of ours, and they run those types of games, which are high player count. You do have to pay for admission, but it's so fun, and it's like the time will fly by. It's not like you're sitting there miserable. The time you will look up and you're like, where did the last 10 hours go? Because it's that great.
They make it a whole experience. Like if you were going to spend the same amount of money or even more money on an escape room that lasts a couple of hours, this would be the same or less for an entire day that they pour their heart and soul into, and they make it just a true experience for everyone that goes. So if you're following DFW Gaming Village and what we do across DFW, this is a group that we buddy up with often. They're awesome.
Yeah. So if you are local to town, look them up. Because they desperately need people as well, because they are they were hurting because of COVID as well. So definitely look them up as well.
And Matt wanted to talk about expansions for a moment, right?
I really do. Most board games have expansions. No, yeah, if you're getting bored, with the base game, I would say over half of all board games have some kind of expanded content that you could get for them. Video games have expansions, same kind of thing, yeah.
The one on the screen right now is Arkham Horror, and that by itself is a beast of a game, but then they just keep adding content after content after content. Kind of almost like Dead by Daylight, for those of you guys who play that. Like I wish that Dead by Daylight would add like more things for the survivors to do. But the way that they add more survivors and more hunters and things like that goes a long way for the game.
Did we put the picture of it? Yeah, this is all of it put together, which is just absurd. And each of these expansions not only adds just more cards that you're gonna play with, like you would the base game, just more cards in the decks. It adds boards, mechanics, new rules, new systems, all kinds of stuff. It's intense.
And just for a brief moment on like what we tend to do is we tend to either, if you want to host board games at your house, we don't mind chatting with you and saying things that will go a long way to helping make a board game night successful. Almost any weekend that we're not doing anything, we say open door, like, hey, come over and play games. And then we help other people with, if they want to host, what that would look like. We have friends that host LANs for certain events and whatnot at their house. Imagine, like, we know all the work that goes into setting up this LAN. They have the whole thing like mapped out. It's gorgeous. But having people do that in their homes when you don't know where all the breakers and things like that are, it can be rough the first couple of times that they try to do it. And even with board games, like understanding how many players can be or games can fit on a certain table with chairs and space goes a long way.
Yeah, and it happens pretty often where someone will host a board game night and they're just entering the hobby. They pick up a real decently heavy, like an Arkham Horror style game because the box looked cool, and they invite 20 people over. The game plays, 4 or something. And when everyone gets there, not everyone can play, and then they start opening the shrink wrap and start reading the rules at people. And that's not a great way to get people into it.
6 hours later, they're very bored, and they've come up with a reason to leave.
The biggest thing on that slide right there is making sure you at least have some familiarity with the rules. You don't have to memorize every rule. Like, people don't expect you to be Rain Man, although there are games where, I've played them so much that I could probably explain the rules in my sleep, and I know that goes double for Matt and Tori. But just knowing the rules enough to where you can explain the basic concepts to people, and it's not going to completely turn them off of wanting to play.
And actually, That plays a big part in what we do to decide what board games that we bring. We don't want to bring board games that we say that we can teach you guys and not be able to teach them. Sure, there's one that we played a lot before, but it's been like a year, so we might have to reference how many cards you get or how much you need to do this. But for the most part, we understand the flow of the game and just need a couple refreshers on the specifics. But we make sure that we're bringing games that we can teach you in case you come and you're like, hey, I've really been wanting to play Dune Imperium. Dune just came out, but we need teachers for it. You wouldn't want us sitting there reading the rule book to you, teaching the game that way. But also, we started it for this LAN, and we will continue it for future LANs as we will be posting the link to our library several weeks in advance, and we will let you guys request board games for us to bring. And that also gives us time, if it's a game that we honestly haven't looked at yet or haven't gotten a chance to take off of our shelf of opportunity, that we can refresh ourselves with it or learn it to be able to bring it and teach it so that it's a better experience for you guys that want to learn one of the games that we have. And a lot of you guys who join us for Werewolf have noticed the house rules are homebrews. Game designers are awesome, but they don't always have everything that could possibly happen in a game. Cost becomes a factor and things like that. Some games make it really easy for you to add your own stuff. Werewolf has made it really easy for you to add your own stuff. We have hundreds of unique roles that don't just come from the box themselves. Like you guys know Cthulhu or Serial Killer or Bloody Mary became canon.
Dr. Boom became
canon.
canon,
Yeah.
but they don't call it Dr. Boom. I refuse to acknowledge that other name. But anyway.
He doesn't exist. He's Dr. Boom forever.
They stripped him of his PhD.
But it's really cool that if you're like, you know what, I like this game, but I've played it a lot, I want to add my own spin to it, you have all the materials, just go ahead and try it a different way sometimes. Even when Michelle with Goliath Games brought up Shit Happens up here, she was like, you know what, for funsies, for the audience stuff, let's just look at two and see which one you think has the bigger terrible factor, and rolled with it from there. Like, that was a neat little spin on a game that on its own was a lot of fun.
The most simple example I can use is Uno. Everybody knows what Uno is. Nobody plays Uno the same way.
And they've officially said that we play it wrong, and
Yes.
everyone's like, that's nice.
And nobody cares. Like, the Uno Twitter account put out, hey, you know, you're not allowed to stack cards and make people draw like 40 cards, and people are like, you're lying.
Thank you for the game. We'll take it from here.
Exactly. So just whatever you're comfortable with. And fun factor. Games are supposed to be fun. Like, you know, that's why people played Slappers Only in GoldenEye.
I might have hit a button twice. Everything is fine. I'm going to try to go back, and I'm going to hope it doesn't break. RPGs. Okay. I lied slightly because previously we wouldn't talk about specific RPG systems, but in this case, we are introducing RPGs because they've been asked for at LANallNIGHT. So we want to, over the next couple of slides, talk about the ones that they've been bringing. Because a lot of us know D&D and Pathfinder, and that's what we grew up on, whether it was 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 3.5, or if you've gone through the whole slew up to 5 now, or switched over to Pathfinder 1 or 2. Those are what you know. But there's so many more RPGs out there with different themes, different things that make them run. It's a whole other world of gaming. And you guys know RPG stands for role-playing game. A GM or a DM is the game master or dungeon master, the person who is running it. A PC would be a player character, and an NPC would be a non-player character. Those are simple ones that we all know from. Two rules, just like before. We are here to have fun. If there's something that is not fun about the game, make it fun. And hopefully you're finding a GM or a DM that is meshing well with the group, and you guys all understand kind of what you're expecting from the game, or you're going into it like, I'm just going to learn something and have not a high expectation other than to have fun. And then the second rule is the GM does make the rules. He is trying to tell a story. He's trying to lead you through something, and he's probably teaching you the system. So kind of following along what they do, at least while you're in that session. If that isn't for you, then you don't go back to another one. And if it is, then you kind of figure out the rules of the road there. Comments on rules 0 and 1?
Nope, I think that's spot on.
Indeed.
So there are a lot of different RPGs. There's one, or even the types of players. You have the casual gamer, the people that are there for stories, the ones that are specialized, that like to have a very type of character that they want that repeats over and over again. The tactician, which likes difficult or realistic challenges, or the power gamer, the person who likes to make the strongest character possible and roll as many dice as possible.
Which one are you?
Casual, with a hint of specialist. I'm pretty sure all of my characters have followed a very similar pattern whenever I make them.
I'm casual.
Power. I love being the tank and punching things in the face.
We get along. How to start an RPG. This is the age-old struggle of we want to do this, and we do one session, or we do one session of creating our characters, and then we never get back to it. We even struggle with that in legacy board games. So any comments on how to continue through a campaign game with people or continue an RPG and helping out with that?
I would say there should be some kind of rule in place to where if one person can't make it, you don't kill the whole session. Because a lot of people, I think, they want to make sure everyone's involved. So if one person cancels in a 5-person party, which is pretty common, they'll just cancel the whole event. I think there should be rules, or not rules, but methods for continuing on. And then when the person that didn't make it for whatever reason, will want to go back, and they're like, oh, crap, they went on without me. I need to go catch up and see what's going
on. Finding an experienced DM. First time DMing is how you get new DMs, but I think it's really important to find an experienced DM who's good with making it fun, also knows how to make it challenging, and also doesn't mind teaching. But yeah, just trying to learn, having a bunch of new players trying to learn how to play and learn how to DM at the same time, no bueno, not fun. So finding an experienced DM.
And chat, I would also encourage you, if there is an RPG that you know or would recommend, please put it in. Or even if there's a comment on anything that we're saying, like, how have you kept campaigns going for as long as you have? Or are you in the same boat as a lot of people and you are struggling with getting a campaign started, going, things like that? I will say on Matt's note about being okay with somebody not being able to make it, as long as it's not like half the party. My favorite campaign from years ago, we did online, and it was through Pathfinder First Edition. We had 3 or 4 DMs, and it was open world. So each DM was kind of in charge of a certain part of the map. We all met up in the center, and then they were all kind of in charge of their own breakaways. And they had a system for if the party decided to go a different route, that they would randomize the stuff in between and could do like a pick your own adventure for them kind of thing. So what we would do is, like, Tuesday night, we knew that Josh would be the DM. So you knew that your choices were either going to be going down Josh's, like, haunted mansion path in the east, or, kind of making the way by exploring around it. Or if you knew that Sarah was the DM on Saturday night and you showed up for the Saturday one, then you were going to go down to her library, or you were going to be around that. And we had people in charge of downtime. So that if you didn't go on the adventure, you still said, well, this is what I did for the week. I was a guard, or I went around and worked for this part of the town and whatnot. So it worked for like 2 years. It was fantastic. People could jump in as they needed to, jump out as they needed to. We always had rolling DMs. It just got to the point where life got in the way. So I think for this slide, we're used to the traditional. We're used to the exact same, I don't know if See what I point to that? But we're used to the exact same format of what a character sheet should look like. You have your strength, you have your stamina, you have your dexterity, you have your charisma, all of that. You have your feats. Everyone's used to it from D&D and Pathfinder, but there's so many different ways that you can build a character. One of the ways that we're going to talk about is there's a way to build characters based on cards. That one was played earlier with E-Rock and Brandon. Do you have a comment on the digital or online ones? Because I know that Gloomhaven can kind of be an RPG depending on how you run it, and that's gone online. But what else, other than like Roll20 and Tabletop Sim has a way to do it now?
Yeah, I think those are the big ones. It's Roll20 is huge. It's a customizable system. It's a website. It's free. Has tons of free assets. You can build maps.
We did ours on Roll20, but I've heard good things about doing it on Tabletop Sim now.
Yeah, many do it there as well. Yeah, there's all kinds of ways to do it online.
Or even text-based ones, like through Discord, or just chat-based ones with just having a microphone open. Well, there came and went minis. Everything is fine.
You can use minis.
No, I think that's what it's supposed to be. So these are some of the, I think, Matt, were good on this one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are so many different RPG systems out there. When people think tabletop RPGs, they pretty much exclusively think of something like Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder. But there is, I would almost go as far to say, there is a rule set for like every single piece of media out there. There's an RPG rule set. I mean, some of this, I don't want to say absurd, but I mean, really, there's a Princess Bride role-playing game. There's a Sailor Moon role-playing game. There's one called Maid where the players are maids and the DM is the owner of a mansion and you're trying to be the best maid. I don't know. There's a lot. It's wild.
Right?
Hey, whatever they make it as. I mean, sure.
What if I just like to clean, sir?
One of the most fun ones I played in college was called Scion. And what it was is that it treats and we're going any further, this is not meant to be controversial, but it treats every religious pantheon as like canon, is that, it's real. And you pick a deity of any religious pantheon that you want. You're a scion, which means that person has imbibed you with their power, and you do things based on that. So like, let's say, Zeus can't keep it in his pants because Zeus can never keep it in his pants, but whatever. Let's say Zeus allows your character to throw lightning bolts, things of that nature. Or like Hermes makes you really run fast. Like people came up with all kinds of crazy stuff from other pantheons, and it was a really fun game.
And there's two more really unique ones that I've looked into. I've not played one, but I've played the other. But there's one system called the End of the World, and what makes that one unique is that the players are role-playing as themselves. So during character creation, you're all sitting at the table, you're rolling out your stats. Now, you actually don't roll the stats per se. You assign yourself stats. And it is the traditional stats like strength, dexterity, agility, and so on and so forth. But there's a really cool system in there to where people can anonymously reduce or increase your stats. So, for example, if I say, "Oh, well, I'm the fastest person. I'm 10 strength. Or not strength, but speed. I'm the fastest person in the world." Well, obviously that's not true. So the players can anonymously, so no hurt feelings, hopefully, can reduce it to something that's a little more believable. But how the game will go is once everyone has their characters, usually the GM will start at the game by like, all right, I go to the bathroom, and you hear a loud scream, and then boom, the game begins right there at the table. You're playing as yourselves. What do you do? And the one we did was a zombie one, so it was really fun. It was cool.
Well, didn't you also look up like maps of stuff around you and like the schematics of a hospital? Or something?
I got the floor plan of a hospital that they fled to, and I was actually like asking how far they're running, where they're going. They found the cafeteria, they found some food, and they were getting lost in this hospital. It was fantastic, just because it was all real.
Right, what would you do? I like the concept of arguing what your stats would be if you were on a character sheet. But then also, what was this one called? End of the World?
Yeah, End of the World, yeah.
You've got to run that here sometime.
Yeah, it's great fun. And it's definitely made, so another concept for RPGs is a one-shot. So it's not, everyone just sits down and can play, and it's just one sitting and it's done. I mean, you can keep playing, but it's great for just sit down and play. The other one that I want to talk about briefly is called, I believe it's called Everyone's John, or it's just called John or something.
Is that the one where everyone is a different like emotion in John's head? Or
Well,
the different
yes,
voices in John's head.
sort of. So it's every player is a different aspect of John's personality or a different voice in John's head, and they're all competing to control
This one
one
person
person.
going through their own story.
Yeah, so like one person can be like, "Oh, we got to finish college. We got to hit the books." And the other one's like, "Well,
like,
heck with that.
nah.
And we'll play video game." You know, it's pretty funny.
And that reminded me of the movie Inside Out, where you would see all the different emotions inside of people's heads and how they were arguing. I thought that was a really cool idea for an RPG. But I want to touch on what Traditz was talking about with one-shots versus campaigns. I think one-shots need to be given a lot more credit because you don't have to spend an entire day making a character, and you don't have to spend a year on a campaign. You can just try out these easy character creations that have a lot of depth to them, and you can just try out these different systems, because there's a lot of different ways to look at stats or feats or how you success or fail on these different obstacles that you're trying to do, what the setup is, whether it's card-based, dice-based, if you're just storytelling the whole time. One-shots are a great way to try out these games, and they can kind of give you an insight on if you want to attempt to get a campaign going. So a lot of what's going on in the other room with forward RPGs is they're doing these one-shots, and then they're saying, you know, do they just stick with one-shots for this one, or do they like to do them as a campaign? So you get some insight on how you want to go about these campaign or these RPGs with your friends. And more on, what is this one? All Flesh
Must be eaten. Yeah, it's another zombie one that's great fun.
Is Death Watch the...
Yeah, it's Warhammer 40K, so if you and your friends ever wanted to be Space Marines and go out and purge the Xenos.
And then Star Wars, the Edge of the Empire, which is not the one that they did. They did a different one. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different Star Wars RPGs.
Yeah, there's Fantasy Flight, which is a big board game and RPG company. They did 3 different ones for Star Wars, which is and they're all the same system, and they can all be combined. So there's Edge of the Empire, where if you ever wanted to play as like a bounty hunter or a smuggler or something, you think Han Solo, right? What they're playing in there, I believe, or they were, was Age of Rebellion, which is more like you're part of the Rebel Alliance and you're actually...
No, they're doing both.
Oh,
if they
wow,
got
okay.
enough people, then they're doing both. So half of the team has one DM, and they are stormtroopers, and the other half are the rebels, and they're kind of going against each other.
Nice, yeah. And then the third one is something like Way of the Force. It's if you're a Jedi or a Sith or something. I believe that's what it's called.
So this is the first one that was played last night. And this is the RPG, apparently, that inspired Cyberpunk. What's the number?
2077.
Yeah. But it's called The Original Role-Playing Game of the Dark Future, a world of corporate assassins, heavy metal heroes, and brain-burning cyber hackers, packed with cutting-edge technology, intense urban action. Within this book, you'll find everything you need to tackle the mean streets of the 2000s in a game system that combines the best in a realistic action with playability. And a couple notes from the DM, Evan, last night. He had Steve and Dan, who were playing as rock stars past their prime and their stage tech down on his luck. They took a do or die deal to get out of their financial troubles, earning their own nightclub, but sparking a war between 2 of the wealthiest families in the process. They had a lot of fun. They were really creative. The role-playing went well, and they helped to create an immersive world where they could have run a whole campaign with all of the different storylines just in one night.
And the nice thing about a Cyberpunk 77 role-playing game is that it doesn't ship with bugs and glitches like the video game did.
Burn.
It needed to be said.
But it's a good game.
I'm just telling the truth.
This is the one that was happening earlier today. I believe Marvel Heroic Role-Playing. So Brandon is one of the DMs that was with us since 9 a.m. We didn't tell him that we stay up until like 4 or 5. We have regrets. But he was here since like 9 a.m. and he had like 4 different games that he could run. So we advertised one, but if people had come in saying that they wanted something else, he had a slew of them to choose from. But Marvel Heroes is one of them. what was it about this one that I wanted to say? Because it's a lot of the classic heroes, but it also does something else. Either way, it's a lot of fun. The game master is called the Watcher. This is a good one where you can really be super powerful because it's all heroes and whatnot. But they run this game a lot, and I see a lot of people have a great time with it, especially when you get a look at the heroes that you know, and you also get to learn about heroes that you don't know as much that don't necessarily have a movie or anything out for them yet.
Yes, as an example, for those of you who have been watching What If, you will know who the Watcher is now.
Spoilers.
He's literally in the commercial.
Look, Matt boycotted that one for like 6 months. We're behind. Another one is Avatar.
Last Airbender.
But this one was specifically a Kickstarter, and it was actually the #1 funded role-playing game on Kickstarter for quite a while. It had a lot of hype around it. And a big part of it, as with the show, is finding balance. So you could just go through like this heroic fantasy and whatnot, but if you want to really dive into some of the lore, they're going to throw you into these situations where you have to achieve true balance. If you don't, then you're finding yourself in need of forgiveness, or you're trying to regain your composure and your sense of self. So it has a really, really good character building. You can really get into the role playing with it without necessarily going through the main characters. It's a cool one where like this RPG does really work. You know, like Princess Bride, it's like, what are you gonna do in Princess Bride? You just gonna do the story? I'm sure there's something to it there, but this, you can be the characters, or you can just go through this whole world that they've built with this balance system with unknown characters.
And the nice thing about role-playing games, again, is the fact that since you make your own adventure, it's easier to not be disappointed by when other people take an IP and do something. Cough, Shyamalan movie, cough. But anyway, things of that nature, it makes it a little bit, it's more fun that way because it's like a choose-your-own-adventure book.
With a twist. This is one that they were playing earlier that I was really interested in, but I got roped into Dune and lost. Not better. But Zombie World. This is a card-based tabletop role-playing game. So you build your character based on cards, and a lot of the things that you can do are based on the cards that you pick and play throughout the game. It just looks really fun and really easy to jump into and just do whatever you want.
Yeah, and it's good to talk about that just very briefly in that, most RPGs, you're rolling a dice to check, to do your checks. More and more are coming out to where you have a deck of cards and you reveal X number of cards depending on the check.
It reminds me of the deck of many things from D&D, but you get like a couple options sometimes depending on how it rolls. And then this is the one that in theory is going on right now where Matt was talking about a little bit, where you can be the rebels as per tradition, or you can be the stormtroopers, or you can go in and be specifically the Jedis or the Sith, wherever they fall in their alliances. And right now they're doing one where if you chose the stormtroopers and you're with that DM and he is building up your side, and if you chose the rebels and you're with that DM and you're building up that side, and there will be conflict between both of them as they go through this similar scenario. And this is Forward RPG. I'll have it posted in Discord as well. But they have a website as well as a Discord to connect with these guys, talk with them about more RPGs. Like I said, they're going to keep coming back with us. They've been friends with us for a long time, and with the request more and more coming up for getting RPGs, these was immediately the people I thought about, like, I need to get E-Rock over here and get some of his DMs on our time. And I think that so far we've had a couple games going, 2 from last night, 2 from tonight, or no, 1 from last night, 2 from today, and then we'll see if this last one made over here, if there are going to be more tomorrow. Even if you just want to go in and talk to them or see how it's going, it's good to just try out something new. All right, with that, that is pretty much what we have. I didn't see a whole lot of questions. I got a lot of nice comments. Y'all are wonderful. Comments about Munchkin, and thank you for those of you who did come in, chat with us, watch us from the stage and whatnot. Any questions before we say kind of our final things about what's coming up next? I talked about what to look forward to with Forward RPG.
We have an audience. One question. Can someone think of one question? Oh, about board games and RPGs?
So E-Rock and Branded should both be over there, and if they have, more than like 1 or 2 people, then they're going to have one side versus another side. So you can technically do one side versus another side with one DM. It's just a lot for them to wrap their head around, and usually one team has to wait while the other one is going. But when you have 2 DMs, they already have a plan that they've come up with together, so they can run both sides. Well, they work together to work against each other.
Yeah, the DMs, the GMs will they're I don't think they're biased. So the players are against each other, but the GMs are creating the
scenario that flows well for them. And depending on the DM, they might have an agenda where they really want their side to win because, well, that's their group that they're running through. But maybe they have the typical GM mentality of, if my group dies, I win. That just depends on the DM or that one. But you should definitely check it out. All good. Next up is going to be Werewolf. I'll do a quick what Werewolf is. So we really like social deception games, especially at night, whenever we've been playing heavier games throughout the day. It's a great way to unwind. It's usually a large group of people who do not know what is going on, but they are the good guys. There's a small group of people who are tired of that. So they are the bad guys, and they are trying to overthrow and win power of the village. Red versus blue, but the red tends to be in a smaller number. Blue tends to be in a larger number. They'll have different abilities throughout it, like a seer who is trying to find the werewolves, or the red team that gets to wake up at night and devour someone. They're not going to devour another red team because they know who each other are, but they are going to try to devour someone on the blue team. And they go until either all reds are gone or the reds meet parity with the blues. All different types of roles. Sometimes we even throw in green roles like Cthulhu, or Tom Bassel, or, right, he just wants to play the game. Right? Just wants to play the game. And then even if we don't have enough for Werewolf right away, we'll play things like Word Slam, which is a great party game for trying to get your team to guess the word just based on card clues. We also have something called Monikers, which you play pyramid game, going into just one, going into charades with the same cards, and you're trying to get your team to guess these same cards, but it's really hard because the cards are not easy.
Real quick, what were the clues for the word that none of us could get? Just the clues.
Old, dead buildings.
Okay, don't give the answer. Can anyone guess one word what an old dead building is?
Old dead building. You are cheating. Old dead building.
Nope. Nope. Nope.
So imagine me standing in front of cards just pointing at the same cards that say old dead building. Keep going.
And there's like 8 people behind her just staring at the cards like, all right, do y'all give up? Ruins.
Ruins. But you are limited. You have like a row of cards that are verbs, a row of cards that are adjectives, a row of nouns, and a row of like directions or something. So that's all that I had. I was like, there's nothing else that would be ruins.
Yeah, and it's 2 teams, and they each have the same word that they're trying to get people to guess. So it's great fun. I would be happy to play that after this. I mean,
Word
just
Slam
for a
in
little
5?
bit. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Well, real quick story. There was one BGG con that Matt had to work. Surprise, even though he'd requested off like 6 months in advance. They were like, yo, you gotta work. So we went to the convention late, and we were just gonna go up to the hotel room and go to sleep. We were over it. We were annoyed. And our friends were like, in the group chat, Word Slam in 5. No, we're going to bed. Another message. Word Slam in 5. No. We get another message. Word Slam in 5. We give in because this goes on for a little while. We go downstairs, we see what they're playing. There's a group of like 30 people around these tables, and they're just playing this game Word Slam. They're shouting, they're trying to figure it out. It's so super hype, and we ended up staying up till 4 a.m. So Word Slam in 5 has become a thing. It's a wildly fun game, no deception going on. You're just trying to guess the word faster, and it's just a really cool twist on the typical like pyramid game, the thing with your head on your phone.
I don't know the name of that. I don't remember.
Like everyone's played it in like a headset.
Yeah,
Like
there you go.
everyone's played it in a line at some point. But yeah. So come out and play party games with us on the official schedule. I just see myself. So on the official schedule, I'm sure someone will come in to make an announcement for what else is going on. But werewolf and party games are starting as soon as we're done here. And if you were in the audience, I don't want to throw things. He wants us to throw them.
What are we throwing?
Throwing things. Ready. Woo. This one's harder. Eek. I got through farther. Grover, come on, stand up for it. Are you ready? Are you ready? Yeah. Don't let him do it. Just paid fetch with Grover. Are you hoarding them? Throw them. No. That's the same guy. Over here. Nope. All right, guys.
I was told Land All Night didn't have insurance.
Don't spread that. All right. It was wonderful as usual. Hopefully this was a little bit of the same stuff, but just a little bit for those of you who didn't see us last time, and then a big dip into the things that we are bringing that is a little bit new, with a little bit of insight about what we're about to do. Party games.